Okay, thank you, Emma, for joining for this last wrap-up. We are here to record this last session on the key insights and takeaway on the module about online facilitation and online support. So we saw many contributions coming through the forum during the past 2 weeks. So good to have a last summary made by us. So in this module, we talked about online facilitation, and the first thing that comes to our mind in these days is webinar, and is of course online facilitation of webinar. So do you agree with this point of view? Do you agree that we can make an equation between online facilitation and webinar?
I think that's, of course, absolutely part of it, and probably quite a big part of it. And that if I think about it, I think it also has other elements. For example, in this course, we didn't have many webinars, and at the same time, I would say that you and also the mentors have done a lot of facilitation. So it can really also be facilitating conversations and other steps, as well as some of the participants in the course were working with communities of practice. So that's also another type of facilitation that is happening online, that is not necessarily a webinar. And I really like this model of facilitation that talks about that when you facilitate people, process, and a place or space. And in our case, the place and the space is the virtual environment, which means kind of the technical side of things. And then the process is the various activities that you decide to implement, which may be synchronous or not synchronous. And I think they equally could need facilitation. And as well, the people, which is about individual or group support and group dynamics. So yeah, definitely includes and goes beyond, in my view.
Thank you. And talking about online facilitation and webinars, during the course, we used a video to showcase how a webinar call can really go wrong, right? So, I mean, we really thought about having a worst case scenario where in a webinar call, you really miss like eye contact, you miss like physical contact, you miss lack of planning, lack of coordination among the team members, and therefore the meeting or the call can really go wrong without a concrete achievement at the end of the meeting. Fortunately, we received also some feedback from the participants in the course that they found the video funny. They reported as well to have gone through some, let's say, small disaster during calls, but not as big as the ones shown in the video. So, for example, Julia reported to have had some microphone issues in a call, therefore this made the call very funny, or it was not, I mean, the expert was not managing to convey the message properly. Or Pierre Alain reported an issue regarding the fact that many of the experts who are joining the calls do not have time to read instructions, and therefore this is going to mess up with all the planning that the team is doing behind the call. So we had like a few issues, and of course this, I mean, it's normal, and of course we learn also by failing, we learn by errors, we learn by practicing, etc. Also, there was one good comment, I think it was by Inke, saying that she was highlighting the fact that the video, true, that was it was really a bad practice, but still was highlighting that the social behaviors in online sessions are very much similar to social behaviors in face-to-face sessions, right? So it shows that at the end of the day, the task of the trainer, being in a face-to-face setting or being in an online setting, is the one to activate each and everyone instead of just delivering a lesson head-on. So this shows that theory and evidence of learning applies for both settings. So what do you think about this last point? And why do you think that we really stress more about online facilitation?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Inke's comments. In the end, we are all humans, and our patterns repeat no matter what environment we are in. They might just appear in different ways. Why are we more stressed? I think, I mean, I also still have a little bit of stress before delivering, no matter if it's online or face to face. And I think that's also good, because that's a sign that I care. And I think if we are a bit nervous, that means that we care. And sometimes a little bit of positive stress can be good. Of course, we don't want to be overpowered by it. And I think I thought about this. There are several reasons. I still think technology can be scary, because um, yeah, it's just never 100% reliable. Things can go wrong in a minute, and it's not like you are sharing the room with the participants. It could mean that you just lose them and you have no idea how to get them back. I think that's one of my biggest nightmares. um, and I also feel like, even though we know that technology can malfunction, somehow we are so used to technology working perfectly, and we have this really high expectations for technology to work perfectly. So we might not have so much patience as participants, or to yeah, deal with the technological issues. And I feel like, because the people are not in the same room, it's easy to feel alone. And this is why I think it was Bruno who said the comment of teamwork. I think that's really good to have team members to support you. And last but not least, I think because we are on the screen all the time, I think we feel much more observed, much more on the spot. And also we see ourselves as well, which actually I learned you can turn off on Zoom. And that can be very helpful, because then we're not also splitting our attention monitoring ourselves. So yeah, some tips that I think came up also was, just do testing as much as you can, especially with the technology. If you can log on a good amount of time before, to make sure everything is working, at least on your end. Have people to support you. I think a lot of times we take on facilitation and tech facilitation alone, and that's very stressful, because it's enough to like deliver what you want, and then having to troubleshoot can be very distracting for you and the participants. And also, just like for face to face, whatever helps you to prepare yourself, maybe breathe a little bit, or shake it off. I don't know, whatever helps you to arrive and be centered, do that before you start a call. And for me, there's one mantra that helps, which is, it might feel like it, but it's really not about me, it's about the learners. And that can also shift the focus from, oh, me messing it up, to I'm here to support the learners.
No, thank you. No, I think these are like very good tips, and they should facilitate, the rehearsal and the planning, but also switching about what is facilitation at the end of the day. And talking about facilitation, as you said, like it's really about learners. It's about activating learners. In this module, we also talked about methodologies that can help you as a facilitator in online settings to eventually make sure that participants discuss, they share, you ensure that at the end of a meeting also an output is achieved. And we were providing a link to a database which is called Compass, and is a database of participatory methodologies that usually, as trainers at RTCLO, we use in the classroom, right? So we use this database to activate learners in face-to-face settings. And we ask participants to reflect on how these methods can also be used in online settings, because at the end of the day, this is what we want. We want to activate knowledge sharing, we want to activate reflection, brainstorming, assessment, etc. And these methodologies can provide you some guidelines. A few methods were shared by participants as well. For example, Valerica was sharing like how she could translate the agreement and certainty metrics methodology also in a course setting where webinar and forum can be combined together. You are an experienced face-to-face trainer as well. You just say that you have a background as a face-to-face trainer. In these days and months of being forced to online sessions, is there a methodology that you found yourself to be working well also in online settings that you would like to suggest as a fit for purpose also in webinars or in an online tutor course like this one?
Mm. Yeah, ultimately, I think it's kind of up to our imagination. A lot of the things that I have thought first impossible to make it work online is actually very much possible. It's just a matter of probably adapting and adjusting. So my first message is really, test and try, and you know, maybe you have a few colleagues who do this, so get together and try certain methods together and see how it can work. And also I keep an eye on communities that inspire me a lot, and they generate, it's amazing, they have been generating so many amazing resources on how to make methods work online, such as the Art of Hosting community on Facebook is really active on this. Also, the World Cafe community has been providing a lot of guidance on how to run World Cafe events online. And then there's another website called Go Game Storm, which is based on the book Game Storming, and now it's very much a community curated content, and a lot of the activities there actually work online. So I recommend to just keep an eye on communities that are doing a really great job right now to showing these examples. And personally, one thing that I have been doing a lot lately is I'm a huge fan of energizers, and I feel like it's so important to engage the whole human being, and somehow it's more easy. I thought, you know, it's more easy to do it face to face than online, it's not possible, etc. But actually, with a lot of experimentation and testing, there is a lot that you can do. And I don't know how many people here use Zoom, but there are a lot of interesting features in Zoom that you can then capitalize on to use energizers, such as changing people's names or giving a number to everyone, because then you can do a lot of energizers that are related to doing things in an order without having to know who's next, for example. So everyone has a number. Or there's a really interesting feature on Zoom that I didn't know before, which is spotlighting, where one person can be selected and everyone can see that person. And so that's really good for copying type of energizers, like copying a movement or agreement type of energizers. And also the feedback buttons can be fun for asking some questions, and then people can use the feedback buttons. So that can also be good for ice breaking. Yeah, and ultimately we are still people, even if we are in front of our computers, and we have bodies. And sometimes, you know, I say, if you don't want to be seen while you're doing some stretches, just turn off your camera or step away from the screen. But it's very important, I think, that we make people move.
Yeah.
And also another one I wanted to share, which is visual metaphors. I think you have used Miro in the course, and there's also other similar apps and where they allow you to put a picture. And I've been using that a lot. I think it works really well in face-to-face. And then also thanks to these whiteboard sharing, brainstorming apps, you could create your own visual metaphor along the lines of which then you can help people think and brainstorm together. And it's a more fun, creative way to brainstorm than just writing in a Google document.
Yeah, no, good point. Thank you. I think I found that the list of icebreakers you shared, like, also good to try, and also good list of communities. I think, as you say, like, communities are very important because, for example, there could be like a good website or a good database of methodologies, but these somehow remain static resources. And of course, you need to make sense of these resources and adapt them. While, for example, communities are, I mean, they should be updated, and the communities you refer to, for example, the Work Cafe community is pretty active, and of course, the members there are basically reflecting what really is going on in these days. So the huge interest in transforming face-to-face traditional methodologies into online settings, and I guess there is a lot to learn from. And the creativity is really like there is no limit to creativity. Final question, since you gave an example of an icebreaker and also other techniques like a collaboration and brainstorming in a webinar or in a virtual setting, we also touched upon on the feature of providing summaries, wrapping up, which is also like one of the key function of or task of a facilitator. Usually in face-to-face setting, the facilitator needs to make sure that all comments, all contributions are heard and acknowledge, let's say, the different views and perspective, but try also to report back a summary or making sure that the key lessons learned are highlighted or outlined somehow. So in the course, we were redirecting learners towards a forum discussion, which was pretty popular and pretty heavy. And we asked them to give us like some takeaways in a visual format. Can you give us also another concrete example of when using a wrap-up technique in online setting, other than doing a poster presentation or a sort of visual presentation? Where do you suggest to include such a technique, and how should you implement it?
Mm. Yeah, I think I'm actually I've been learning from you and the design in this course some of the asynchronous wrap up techniques that, like for example, what we're doing now. I find it's very interesting and also helpful, and as well like asking participants and using all the different visual tools. So I think that's really great. And then I thought to throw in a more possibly synchronous, though it could be done also asynchronously, wrap up or debriefing technique. So yes, sometimes we have discussions, and also especially if we go into more sophisticated methods that are not necessarily just discussions but also experiences, or that really go more in depth. I find sometimes, or I always find the importance of debrief. So it's a bit of a different version of a wrap up. And I like this model of the 4 F's of debrief. So there's the facts, which is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just recalling what is the experience that we have gone through. So that could be also interesting for a whole course, for example, how we started, what were the different things that we did, etc. And then the second F is feeling. So how did you feel? Maybe which were the parts, if now you're listening, thinking about this course, which were the parts that you found most challenging? Where were the parts where you felt really in your element? Where are the things that you took notes that you have to improve here, you want to learn more, you are curious? So that's the feeling area. Then it's about finding. So what are the things that you have learned, either about yourself or about the topic? And then the last one is about future. So how are you going to take what you have learned with you? How are you going to apply this? And this can be done individually, this can be done together in a group, and then people can throw the answers, and then you kind of just collecting them. But I find it also a very useful tool, especially for example in a longer process,
Mm-hmm.
to reflect with this type of debrief.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that this 4F method is very nice, and I use this technique a lot, for example, at the end of long workshops or long face-to-face settings, maybe lasting a week. And I think in the last module of the course, we also tried to do a similar exercise. It was called online retrospective, and I think it's just a declination of what you have just summarized, where we were asking participants to reflect on first things like main takeaways, one thing that you really think like you're taking away from the course, one thing that didn't went so well and why, I mean, so that you can recommend something that you encountered as an issue. And then, of course, you reflect on future actions or things that you would like to bring forward. So what are you planning to do now that the course is over? So something like that, we also managed to, we call it retrospective, but of course, I think it's along the lines of what you just shared. And it's a wrap-up technique more probably for participants to reflect on their own learning process, feelings, etc. While on the other side, wrap-up techniques can also be used by facilitators to report back on the different assignments, on the different contributions. So there is a dual functionality about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to stress about the facilitation? I think we touched upon many things. We started from webinar facilitation. We touched upon asynchronous facilitation, some of the techniques that can work in both settings. And you also gave us some examples of real method that can be used in webinars, the wrap-up messages. Anything else?
I mean, one thing that is, I think, my homework for myself, I used to do quite a lot of visual facilitation in face-to-face events, which can be as a method, but also I'm thinking I used it a lot for also wrapping up, creating visual maps, hand-drawn visual maps of what people have said, a little bit like graphic recording, and I think actually they can be very helpful in an online environment. Sometimes it's a bit tricky in terms of, how do you do it? Maybe you do it on paper and then you scan it. It's easier if it's asynchronous, I guess. But yeah, I think especially when we're so far away and disconnected, I think these kind of shared visuals and then even handcrafted visuals can be very powerful way for people to see their own ideas being part of a bigger picture. So that's something that is my homework for myself of remembering that tool and trying to more consciously integrate it also in the online learning spaces.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I think this was insightful. We kept it short. I think that this recording can be useful for those who were not able to contribute through the module, but still want to learn about online facilitation. Thank you, Emma, for your availability. And I mean, we're going to post this on the platform. So see you soon.
Yeah, see you.